Hi, I'm January O'Neill. I am an associate professor at Salem State University. I am also a poet, author of Glitter Road, which came out in February, and author of Rewilding, Misery Islands, and Underlife. I have been a poet, probably for more than 20 years. Writing has always been a part of my life and essential when I divorced. And it's been a part of me and a part of my life choices ever since. Glitter Road is about changes, meanders, transformations. It's tied into the cover, which is a beautiful map from the Army Corps of Engineers, as now in the public domain. So in 2019, I was awarded the John and Renee Grisham Fellowship at the University of Mississippi, Oxford. And I took my then teenagers, my two kids, down to Mississippi. And that was quite the transition to go from Massachusetts to Mississippi. We learned a lot about ourselves during that time. It's steeped in history, not all of it pleasant. It was the grounding force and the reason that I wrote these poems and learned more about the legacy of Emmett Till, who in 1955 was beaten, shot, thrown into the Tallahatchie River, 14-year-old boy. I was driving to Sumner, Mississippi, which is where the Emmett Till trial took place. And I was literally at a crossroads. It was a stop, and as you're driving through all of these cotton fields, so something in me made me get out of the car and stop. And here I am in Mississippi, where ancestors, the enslaved, worked, toiled from can to can't see. And I'm wearing a cotton shirt, and I'm just thinking, it was an incredible experience, so moving, and it stays with me. That trauma stays with me. In 1955, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old boy whose mother sent him from Chicago to Mississippi to stay with relatives over the summer. And when he was hanging out with his friends and cousins, he went into a store and he was accused of whistling at a white woman. So within a day or two, in late evening, he was pulled out of his bed and taken out by a group of men, one of whom was the woman in the store, her husband, and his family. Had taken him out and beaten him, brutalized him, shot him, tied a 75-pound cotton gin fan around his neck, threw him in the Tallahatchie, that fan trying to weight him down, but he floated upriver. His body was discovered. When he was taken to the funeral home, his mother was contacted. She brought the body back to Chicago. When they asked about what kind of funeral she wanted, she insisted on an open casket funeral, even though his body was bloated from the water and again, he had been shot. But she insisted. Now, we didn't have, the internet back then, but it really was one of the first viral moments to happen, certainly ahead of the civil rights movement. And in thinking about my son, my daughter, my son in particular, young, biracial, male, dark-skinned, I worry about his safety. I've written about, my fears around, even in New England where, we're a very, moderate liberal area. I worry about, going a few blocks here or there in any of these towns, and worrying about his safety. So I see Emmett Till's story as a continuation of a story that's been going on before his time and now after his time and into our time. I worry about people of color. I worry about police actions, You know, I worry that Black history is not going to be taught in the way that it should be taught. There's a pullback on what can be taught in schools now. And so, you know, telling Emmett's story is just an opportunity to reach a new audience and remind people that these stories exist and they're relevant. I think community is the bedrock of all neighborhoods, all areas, and we have to strengthen our ties. So if I can do that through art, there's so much value in that for me, and it makes all of my other choices easier. You know, if I'm, you know, I know that poetry is at the center, so I do work around poetry, I do work around art, I do work around, gathering and the administrative parts. It takes a lot of work to make a poetry reading feel seamless, but that's the job. That's what you do. That's the behind the scenes work. Somebody has to do it, so it might as well be me. The Thursday Poets started in 2022 officially, but we have been meeting for years, and this is a group of writers on the North Shore with Salem as our hub. And it came out of, you know, we would talk about our work, and of course it's always about the work, it's always about the writing, but at some point you want people to read your writing and you want people to come to your events, and we just didn't feel like that was happening enough, or felt uneven. It wasn't happening for all of us. And I find great joy in working locally with friends and fellow poets and emerging poets. Art doesn't happen in a vacuum. So being able to share it and to create conversations around it, and if a poem or a collaboration, you know, brings empathy or a new understanding or opens a door that was shut at one point, then, you know, that's what art should be doing. I have been in this area for more than 20 years, and this is where I got married. We divorced and stayed in the area. And then in 2016, my ex-husband Tim passed away unexpectedly. And so I have explored that, the divorce in my second book, Misery Islands, went deeper with that in the book Rewilding, as well as exploring environmental themes. And then this book is really, you know, the next turn, the next stage. You know, for me, being in my mid-50s now with adult children and figuring out who I am now, the book does start out, you know, with some poems that reflect on that past, but quickly we're in Mississippi and learning and exploring and trying to understand the legacy of Emmett Till. And through that, you know, I'm finding out more and more about myself, what I will stand for and what I won't, what I want as a woman, what I want for the world, what I want for my kids. So much about change and transition. You know, I have been divorced since 2010, and then I lost Tim in 2016. So, you know, I was focused on raising the kids and making sure that we were stable. And I had a lot of friends and a lot of help around that, but dating just didn't seem to be in the cards. And so I can't say I was looking when I went to Mississippi, but it ended up happening pretty early in my journey down there. So I didn't write for the first 7 months. I just wanted to really just make sure we were all going to be okay. So we did that for 7 months, and then COVID hit. In fact, we were in Massachusetts for spring break, and then we went down and we were in isolation, in lockdown. And so that's when I started to think, well, maybe I'll put some words down, start to create some poems. One of the structural issues with the book is that, you know, how do you make Massachusetts and Mississippi work together? How do you make Emmett Till poems work with love poems? One of the nice things about going to Mississippi is that I fell in love down there. So I was writing poems about romance and love, which is something I hadn't done in a few cycles. And so Glitter Road is, again, the next phase of this journey, and it is about the changes and meanders and transformations that happen. So it talks about me looking at the Till story and my relationship to it. But it's also about other relationships in my life, my children, my relationship to the world and all of its changes and angst over the last few years, and falling in love again, and being able to experience all of these emotions when I thought parts of myself were cut off completely. So it's just a blessing to be able to have 4 books of poetry. I know how hard it is to publish a book. I know how hard it is to get attention for a poetry collection. So I am beyond thrilled that the reception for Glitter Road has been positive. My hope is that people come away reading this book inspired. Maybe they learn a few things about Emmett Till. But I also hope that they just enjoy it. I mean, I don't think they have to learn any life lessons from it. If it opens up a conversation, I'm thrilled. I want them to be able to not be put off by poetry, because I think we all carry around these ideas of what poetry can be, which may have come out of high school, which may have been about rhyme, which is fine. But also, Shakespeare and Dickinson, who are amazing models taught in school, but I don't know if people really know what modern poetry looks like. And we're talking about the subjects that happen all the time. It's the extraordinary in the ordinary. So it is, watching the birds at the bird feeder. It is, picking wildflowers or looking at the moon, or what our hopes are for our children and what we hope for this country. I mean, it's all of that. And, I want it to be accessible and enjoyable. And, I want it to find the reader. And I never know what happens to my poems when they leave, So, I'm amazed at the things that people find in my poetry that I just never thought of. I'm sitting down writing a poem and they tell me this whole backstory. I'm like, we all bring ourselves to the work. And so hearing those stories, getting out and talking to people, it's pretty amazing.